The question of which game is better being Midnight Horrors vs Darkest Hours is not even close because you can just tell by playing each game for 20 minutes. Anyways, I'm not here to just complain about Midnight Horrors, I already did that for 11 minutes straight. It's kind of outdated now because I have different opinions. Instead, I will compare the two while also reviewing Darkest Hours. But a short summary is the new player experience is terrible, the pay to win is terrible, and like a billion other problems. Anyways, Darkest Hours is a great game. It still has roughly the same problems just like Midnight Horrors, but this time the game is actually playable. You're finally not just a disabled homeless person mindlessly running around, you have possession of items that will actually help you in a more teamwork-oriented game. Chapter 1. What the hell do you even do in this game? In Darkest Hours, your goal is to simply outlast the clock. If you survive witnessing the timer reaching 0, you win. Of course, staying alive isn't easy because you need to constantly run from the killer. Your saving grace are your 3 random items you obtain each round that range from simple food items that heal or a whole metal bat specializing in whacking killers with. To speed things up, objectives exist. The basic motto is to complete the objective to lower the time, otherwise you'll often be stuck with an extra minute of surviving or overtime if you don't capture the objectives. Chapter 2. The killers are more than just reskins of each other. In Darkest Hours, killers are randomized and each one is unique in their own ways. You're not just dealing with the generic Eldritch abomination constantly running at you because the Chinese government keeps telling them your IP address. Instead, you actually have a chance to breathe because they don't have a permanent GPS tracker on your soul. In Midnight Horrors, the killers basically just have wall hacks 24/7. They know exactly where you are all the time, so the gameplay is just you running in a circle until your health bar reaches 0 and you accept your miserable existence. But in Darkest Hours, you can actually stealth. If you break a line of sight or hide behind a wall, the killer might actually lose you. It turns the game into a legitimate experience of cat and mouse instead of a marathon running simulator. Stuff like this forces you to change based on what's currently happening instead of just holding a coil and maybe the occasional stun item. And that's what I like about Darkest Hours. You're doing more, not just mindlessly running around. Chapter 3. Useful gear that doesn't require a mental aneurysm to obtain. In Midnight Horrors, getting a decent item usually involves grinding for a decade or opening your wallet until it turns into ash. In Darkest Hours, you just spawn in with no strings attached. Every round, you're handed 3 random items from item pool, and for once, they're actually useful. No grinding required, no working at minimum wage, you know how miserable that can be, and the game gives you a good none of the grind. You literally get a fighting chance right out of the gate. In most horror games, you're basically just waiting until you die or win, but here, you can throw hands. Granted, you're lucky enough to spawn with a stun item, but when you do, you get a massive opportunity to get the hell out of there. Something I wish could have been implemented better in Midnight Horrors. Now onto the items, this time they are actually helpful. The items can be summarized into healing, stun, and mobility. Sometimes the items can be 2 at once, like the riot shield giving you a difficult to control speed boost and a stun. The unique part, with a few exceptions, is that all items have a durability meter that goes down with continued use, but that's implemented in a way to not have people abusing them, which I think is great. It forces you to actually use them smartly instead of just playing whack-a-mole. Since you aren't permanently geared with the god tier items, you have to value with what you have. If you're low in durability for a stun item, consider backing out from an engagement or hide behind a teammate. This type of game design is why I call Darkest Hours actually playable instead of Midnight Horrors. You have to be careful with what you have because your safety is temporary. Once that bat, shield, or healing item breaks, you have to be way more careful. Chapter 4. The buddy system that makes you actually care if people die. The game's limited resource system naturally leads into some teamwork, since you can't carry an entire armory, you're reliant on the others around you. In Midnight Horrors, if a teammate died, it can just be shrugged off as better them than me, and the fact that they just constantly respawn doesn't help, and you just moved on with your day. But in Darkest Hours, losing a teammate means the loss of items and one less person for the killer to chase, so the game actually gives you a legitimate reason to revive people. When someone goes down, they enter the down state instead of just instantly being reduced to atoms. You have to run over and physically help them back up. This allows you to risk giving someone a second chance, but it's a gamble on whether or not the killer finds you. If you manage to pull off a revive, you brought a whole new set of items back, and one more meat bag for the killer to chase. It feels like a lobby containing a team of survivors, though this is heavily dependent on the type of server you get. It's that extra layer of cooperation that makes the survival part feel like survival instead of a solo sprint down the hallway. Chapter 5. Unfortunately, this game still has the same problems as Midnight Horrors. Darkest Hours is a massive step up from Midnight Horrors, but sometimes it still has the same genetic defects as the older game is trying to escape from. The most glaring one is a new player experience, which is basically non-existent. You're thrown into the meat grinder with a good luck, hope you don't die, and you're expected to figure out why a ghostly red figure is massacring the whole server. I didn't figure it out until I read the goddamn wiki. Apparently, this dude is mentally crippled and has severe PTSD of any people that do something as small as merely glimpsing him. The wiki does talk about giving a warning, but in actual gameplay, this practically never happens. Someone unknowingly pisses him off, and he chases that guy at Mach 10, and the others begin looking at him because, he's zooming past hallways, and this leads to a whole chain reaction of people dying, where he will then annihilate like half the server. And that's the problem. The game expects you to have a second monitor open with a 50-page Wikipedia deep dive showing walls of text I have to scroll down on and read every single word to understand why I was being beaten to death. The game does give you a death message explaining what to do for that specific killer, which is a massive improvement compared to Midnight Horrors where you just die with no explanation. But that's when you die. You have to wait until you physically bleed out or die in your second life. Then it appears. Why not just give more hints when you're actively avoiding it? How do you fail at the same problems as the older game? It makes no sense. It certainly does better than Midnight Horrors, but this is a matter of did the developers explain their mechanics clearly, and to that I say the issue isn't difficulty, is that the game doesn't explain anything properly. I'm not asking for the game to shove text into my face for saying a killer, I'm asking for killers to have more clues as to what their behavior is. Because right now, it doesn't make any sense. This lack of information also makes the item system even more frustrating. The RNG system of Darkest Hours is great, but this is one of those cases where adding more only makes it worse. The current item pool contains 11 items, and a lot of these are either straight duplicates or just slightly better versions of each other, like the pizza and burger. They both heal you with 2 uses, and that's it. You join around, and your first 3 items are the teddy bear, burger, and a fucking pizza. You are stuck with multiple healing items that do basically the same thing. Stop adding filler items that overlap each other's roles. The only exception to this are item side grades like the Riot Shield that specializes in mobility and stun at the cost of having less durability. And now development is adding a healing coil that solely heals you despite the teddy bear already serving the role of slow healing but high durability. This same rule should apply to killers. Most of them just feel like the same thing. If spotted, run towards you, take a swing, and you'll either instantly die or be left on life support. They are now planning to add more killers from the Dev Spelunking collab, which so far does provide killers that do practically the same thing. Stop! Really, this is the same bullshit that screwed over Midnight Horrors because it had content that was either a snooze fest or is just not fun to play against. I'll give it some leniency because that game was just a bloated disaster in general, but the point still stands. If there's no need to add something, don't add it. The same story applies to maps. If it's utter dog shit, don't add it to the game. Do you want to know the reason why most good horror games don't make complete mazes? It's not fun to play in. You spend like half the round mindlessly wandering the map because what are you supposed to do? Find objectives? You're not finding jack shit. What's worse is that teamwork almost never happens because the players are often too far apart to physically help each other. If a killer spots you, 8 times out of 10 you're just dead. You can't outrun them unless you turn like 6 different corners that don't lead to a dead end, or you're fortunate enough to have a stun item. If you use a mobility item, guess what? You're gonna crash into a wall or be immediately sent to a dead end. Another map type I like to call the Infinite Marathon Simulator can be described as the large ass map with little to no hiding spots, nowhere to go, and without mobility or stun items make it damn near impossible to survive killer encounters, if you can even meet the killers in the first place. They even added the Infinite IKEA map where you will again either never see the killers, meet like 3 or 4 people throughout the map, or have the killer constantly chasing you, but at least this map has hiding spots compared to the numerous expansive maps that just exist. The situation mirrors the common development pitfall being content quality over quality of said content. This appears to be a recurring problem over both games to a point that it just doesn't make sense. Midnight Horrors eventually became overwhelmed by the enormous amount of items and killers that the mechanical identity and the literal gameplay itself was ruined, and there's a risk that this new project is facing the same direction the predecessor game already walked 1,000 miles on. If this continues at the same rate, the authentic experience that appealed to so many people will drag the player count down. It's not like this will happen overnight, but this shit needs to seriously stop. When a game includes a teddy bear and a healing coil that do nearly identical functions, it doesn't offer 2 items, it offers a single mechanic that occupies twice the space in the item loot pool. Every time a functional duplicate of another item or killer is added, the core experience becomes more and more diluted. This makes it difficult for players to find more moments that made the game appealing in the first place. If development does not shift towards more meaningful variety, you may as well just rename the game to Midnight Horrors 2. In my opinion, this game is genetically superior to Midnight Horrors. The introduction of stealth mechanics and RNG item pool, killers that don't immediately end the round in less than 15 seconds, at least some of them, and actually having stuff to do instead of just running in circles or camping in corners for 5 minutes. Some of that still happens, but this is a massive improvement compared to the old game. Look, Darkest Hours isn't a horrendous or a perfect game. It's still carrying the same genetic junk that killed its predecessor, but even with the filler items and the goddamn wiki, it's still a marathon ahead of Midnight Horrors. It's the difference between working at minimum wage to win or using genuine skill to win. One is obviously more preferable than the other. Listen, it's not for everyone, but if you always want to get a second job that requires a PhD in wiki reading just to not get annihilated, congratulations, you found your new obsession. I'm giving it 4 metal bats out of 5, just make sure yours doesn't break when you need it the most. That's all I've got, see ya.